I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd have to choose between family and self-respect. But here I am, standing in the middle of the house I built with my own hands, listening to my parents tell me to sell it. Not just sell it, but sell it to my sister. My name is Sarah. I'm 37 years old, and for most of my life I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed kind enough, and did everything right, my family would love me back in the same way I loved them. I was wrong. I grew up in a house where love was conditional. My parents adored my younger sister Lily. She was the golden child, beautiful, charming, everything a parent could brag about. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the girl who always stayed late at school and never asked for anything. And in our family, that made me invisible. Lily could do no wrong. If she failed a class, it was the teacher's fault. If I got an A, it was expected. If she wanted something, it was bought. If I wanted something, it was questioned. But I told myself it didn't matter, because I would build my own life, one where I didn't have to compete for love. When I turned 27, I bought a small house. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a creaky wooden porch, but it was mine. Every paycheck, every sleepless night, every overtime shift went into that house. It became my sanctuary. And for 10 years I poured my soul into it. Lily, meanwhile, floated through life. She dated rich men, partied in expensive clubs, switched jobs every few months, and always landed on her feet thanks to our parents' money. They paid her rent, bought her cars, and even covered her debts. And every time they did, they looked at me like I should be proud of her. But pride was hard to feel when you were treated like a stranger in your own family. Then one Sunday afternoon, my parents came to visit. It was rare. Usually I was the one expected to show up for birthdays, holidays, emergencies, always driving to them, never the other way around. So when they knocked on my door unannounced, I knew something was off. They didn't sit long before my father spoke. He didn't even bother with small talk. "Sarah," he said, folding his hands over his knee like a man delivering news, not asking permission. "Your sister's been going through a hard time. You know her situation with the apartment." I nodded slowly. I'd heard through family whispers that Lily's latest boyfriend, her boss, actually had kicked her out after things got messy. My mother sighed dramatically. "She doesn't have anywhere to live, dear. We thought maybe she could buy your house. You could use the money to start fresh somewhere else." At first I thought I'd misheard. "My house," I repeated. "You want me to sell it to her?" "Of course," my father said. "She needs stability and you're single. It's not like you need all this space." My chest tightened. "I worked for this house. Every inch of it. You can't just ask me to hand it over." My mother's smile faltered. "We're not asking you to hand it over. She'll pay you what it's worth." Lies. I knew my sister, and I knew what it's worth meant in her vocabulary, a fraction of the real value wrapped in a guilt trip. I stared at them both. "You're serious?" "Completely," my father said. "It's what's best for the family." That word family always came with strings. I wanted to laugh, but my throat closed instead. "And what if I say no?" My mother's tone changed. Softer, but sharper. "Then I guess you're choosing your pride over your family." It wasn't the first time she'd said that to me. It had been her weapon for years, guilt disguised as love. "I'm not selling my house," I said, finally. My voice was calm, but my hands were trembling. Not to her, not to anyone. My father stood shaking his head like I was a child refusing vegetables. "You've always been stubborn, Sarah. Always thinking you know better than everyone else. But one day you'll realize family comes before everything." They left soon after. My mother hugged me stiffly, whispered something about not ruining Christmas, and they were gone. I stood at the window and watched their car disappear down the street. My heart felt heavy, but not broken, because somewhere deep down I'd known this was coming. My family had always found new ways to test how much of myself I was willing to give up. This time I wasn't going to. The next few weeks were quiet, too quiet. No calls, no texts. Then one day I came home from work to find Lily sitting on my porch, sunglasses perched on her perfect hair, pretending like nothing was wrong. "Hey, big sis," she said sweetly. "Can we talk?" I sighed. "If this is about the house—" "Of course it's about the house," she interrupted, flashing that grin that had always melted our parents. "Mom and Dad said you're being difficult." "I'm not being difficult," I said. "I'm setting boundaries." She tilted her head. "Boundaries between sisters." I wanted to laugh. "Sisters don't try to buy each other's homes like used cars." Her tone hardened. "You're making a mistake, Sarah. You think this house makes you special? It doesn't. You're just being petty." Something inside me snapped. petty I built this from nothing. While you were off burning through mom and dad's savings, I was scraping for every cent. You don't get to walk in and take what I worked for." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're dramatic." Then with that smugness only she could perfect, she leaned in and whispered, "You know he's going to buy it anyway, right?" I frowned. "Who?" She smiled. "My boss, the CEO. He's interested in this property for investment. You'll have no choice but to sell." And just like that, she walked away, heels clicking down my porch like she'd already won. That night, I barely slept. I paced the house, every creak of the floorboard echoing with memories. My first paycheck framed on the wall, the kitchen table I'd saved up for, the spot near the window where I'd cried after my first breakup. This house wasn't just property. It was proof that I could build something of my own when no one believed in me. And they wanted to take that away. A week later, I got a letter. A formal one. From a real estate company offering to buy my home at a fair price. The signature at the bottom stopped my breath. Michael Hensley, the CEO, Lily's boss. So she hadn't been bluffing. She'd actually gone behind my back trying to make me look desperate enough to sell. That was the moment something inside me shifted. The fear, the guilt, the need to please, all of it burned away, leaving behind something colder, clearer. I wasn't just going to say no. I was going to make them regret underestimating me. The next morning, I put on my nicest blazer, tied my hair back, and walked straight into Hensley Enterprises. The receptionist gave me a polite smile. "Do you have an appointment?" "Not yet," I said. "But you might want to tell Mr. Hensley that the owner of the house he's trying to buy is here." She blinked, then picked up the phone. A few minutes later, I was escorted into a glass office overlooking the city. Michael Hensley stood by the window, tall, composed, the kind of man who thought the world bent for him. He turned when he saw me, surprised. "You must be Sarah." I met his gaze, unflinching. "And you must be the man trying to buy what doesn't belong to him." He smiled faintly, like a cat watching a bird. "You're direct. I like that." "I'm not here to be liked," I said. "I'm here to tell you you're wasting your time." He chuckled. "Everything has a price." I stepped closer, my voice steady. "Not everything, and certainly not me." For a moment, silence hung between us, the kind that feels heavy enough to break. And that was when he said it. The sentence that would change everything I thought I knew about my sister and my family. He looked straight at me, eyes sharp but oddly curious. "You really don't know, do you?" he said slowly, like someone testing a theory. I frowned. "Know what?" Michael leaned back against his desk, his expression unreadable. "Your sister didn't come to me with a business proposal, Sarah. She came to me with a threat." My stomach tightened. "A threat?" He nodded once, watching me closely. "She said if I didn't buy your house, she'd leak something personal about me, something she shouldn't even know. Apparently your family's not just involved in each other's business. They're very good at digging into other people's too." For a second the words didn't make sense. I blinked, trying to process them. What? He walked around the desk slowly. "She told me you were desperate, that you were behind on your mortgage, that you were emotionally unstable after a breakup. She painted a picture of someone easy to pressure, but the thing is," he said, his voice lowering, "I don't like being lied to. So I did some digging of my own." He opened a folder on his desk and turned it toward me. Inside were printouts, my mortgage records, bank statements, even photos of my house. Everything perfectly in order. He tapped the papers lightly. "You're not desperate. You're not behind. You're not unstable. You're a woman your family underestimates." I felt my pulse quicken. "Why are you telling me this?" He studied me for a moment. "Because when someone tries to manipulate me, I like to understand who I'm really dealing with. And in this case, the person worth my respect isn't your sister." For a long moment, the office was silent, except for the faint hum of the city below. My mind raced, anger, confusion, humiliation, all swirling together until it burned behind my ribs. Lily had gone to my parents, turned them against me, then tried to sell my home out from under me. And when that didn't work, she'd gone to her boss not to negotiate but to blackmail. I swallowed hard. "So what now?" He shrugged. "That depends on you." "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, his voice low but calm. "You could walk away, keep your distance, let them keep playing their little games. Or—" he paused, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You could turn the tables." I stared at him, not trusting the sudden warmth in his tone. "You want revenge?" He shook his head. "Not revenge, truth." Something in the way he said it made me shiver. I left his office that afternoon with my head spinning. The sun was too bright, the city too loud. Every step felt heavy, but underneath the confusion, a strange sense of clarity started to take root. I'd spent my whole life avoiding conflict, keeping quiet to keep the peace. But peace built on silence is just control dressed up as love. And I was done being controlled. That night I called my parents. Mom picked up first, her tone sharp. "Sarah, I hope you're calling to apologize." "Apologize," I said quietly. "For what?" "For being selfish," she snapped. "For turning your back on your family. Your sister is heartbroken. She told us what you said to her." My throat went dry. What I said? "She told us you accused her of stealing, of scheming, of trying to take what's yours." "How could you say such horrible things about your own sister?" I let out a slow breath. Maybe because they're true. There was a pause on the other end, then my father's voice low and disapproving. "Don't start this again, Sarah. Lily has always cared about you. You're just jealous because she's doing better than you." That sentence, "you're just jealous," was one I'd heard since childhood. When Lily broke my favorite toy. When she took credit for something I did. When she lied and I told the truth. That was always their answer: jealousy. But this time I didn't shrink from it. "You know what's funny?" I said softly. "She's not doing better than me. Not really. She's just better at pretending." My mother's voice rose sharp and defensive. "You've always been dramatic." I smiled faintly. "No, Mom, I've just finally stopped pretending too." I hung up before they could respond. It felt strange, liberating, like I'd been holding my breath for 37 years and finally exhaled. The next day, I went to work as usual, trying to bury myself in routine. But something was different. I couldn't stop thinking about what Michael had said about turning the tables, about truth. I didn't know exactly what he meant at the time, but a few days later I found out. I got an email from him, short to the point. Subject: "You should see this." Attachment: a folder labeled "Lily Investigation." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were screenshots, receipts, financial statements, evidence that Lily had been embezzling small amounts of money from the company's charity fund. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to catch the attention of someone who knew where to look. At first I couldn't breathe, then I felt sick. Was this his idea of helping me? Destroying her? I sat for hours that night, staring at the screen, my heart at war with itself. Part of me wanted to send everything straight to my parents, let them finally see who Lily really was. Another part of me felt hollow. Because this wasn't supposed to be about revenge. It was supposed to be about finally standing up for myself. But I couldn't look away. Every document, every transaction, every lie, it was all there. Proof that my sister wasn't the perfect daughter they worshipped. Then I noticed something else. A photo tucked at the end of the folder. It was Lily sitting in a restaurant across from my father. He was handing her something. An envelope. My blood ran cold. I clicked the next photo, then another. The timestamps were clear. They weren't just aware of what Lily was doing. They were helping her cover it up. Suddenly, everything made sense: the sudden push for me to sell my house, the desperate insistence that I help the family. They needed money. Not for Lily's home, for her mess. I stared at the screen, feeling the ground shift beneath me. The betrayal wasn't new, it had just finally come into focus. The next morning I met Michael again. I didn't know why I went. Maybe I needed someone to look me in the eye and confirm I wasn't losing my mind. He stood when I entered, his expression unreadable. "You saw it?" "Yes," I said quietly, "all of it." He nodded. "I told you, truth not revenge." I met his gaze. "Why are you helping me?" He smiled faintly. "Because people like your family think they can twist anyone who doesn't fight back." "I don't like bullies, Sarah." His voice softened. "But this next part, what you do now, that's up to you." I left his office with the folder on a flash drive burning like a secret in my bag. That night I sat on my porch, the cool air brushing against my skin, the weight of everything pressing on my chest. I thought about every moment I'd swallowed my voice for them, every apology I'd made just to keep their love, every time I'd believed that being good meant being quiet. And then for the first time I smiled. Because maybe silence wasn't kindness, maybe it was surrender. And I was done surrendering. The next morning the world looked sharper, the air colder, the colors harsher. It's strange how once you've seen the truth, even the sunlight feels different. It doesn't warm you anymore. It exposes everything that's been hiding in the shadows. I woke up before dawn, the folder still sitting on my kitchen table like a loaded weapon. The flash drive Michael gave me reflected the dim light from the window, small but powerful, like something that could destroy a lifetime of lies with a single click. I made coffee, but I couldn't drink it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stared out the window, watching the mist rise from the grass, thinking about the girl I used to be, the one who believed love was something you earned through obedience. I used to think silence made me strong. Now I realized it only made me easy to control. The truth inside that flash drive wasn't just about Lily, it was about all of them. My parents, their hypocrisy, the way they'd built their image of a perfect family on the back of my compliance. And I was finally ready to tear that illusion down. But how? There were 100 ways I could expose them. I could forward the documents to the company's board, leak them to the press, or send them to the authorities anonymously. Each option was a match waiting to be struck. But I didn't want revenge that left me bitter. I wanted closure that set me free. That night I got a text from my mother. Family dinner Sunday. Everyone's coming. Don't cause trouble this time. It was almost poetic, the universe handing me an invitation to the battlefield. Sunday came too quickly. I spent the morning pacing the house, rehearsing what I might say, deleting and rewriting the message I thought I'd send if I lost my nerve. Ethan, my old friend from college, called to check in, the only person who knew the full story. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. I took a deep breath. Yes, for once I'm not walking away. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, it looked the same as always, polished, proper, pretending. My father was on the porch trimming roses, as if nothing dark could ever grow here. My mother was inside setting the table, her movements practiced and perfect. And Lily, she was already there, glowing in designer clothes, acting like the world had forgiven her before it even knew what she'd done. "Sarah," she said, "all honey and sugar, you came?" I forced a smile. Of course I did. Wouldn't miss family dinner. We sat down around the table the way we always had. My parents began talking about Lily's new opportunity, a vague description of how her boss had forgiven her, how everything was back on track. I looked at her across the table, watching the small flicker of discomfort behind her confident smile. She knew what I had, and she was waiting for me to use it. I waited until my mother poured the wine before I spoke. "Did you ever think," I began quietly, "that maybe the only reason everything feels back on track is because you're used to lying to yourselves?" My mother froze mid-pour. My father looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" I smiled faintly. "I said maybe all of this." I gestured to the table. "The perfect plates. The fake smiles only exists because we pretend nothing's broken." "Sarah, that's enough," my father said firmly. But I kept going. My voice didn't tremble anymore. "You've spent years defending Lily's mistakes, covering them, even paying for them." I turned to my sister. "But this time it's different, isn't it?" Her eyes widened. "Don't," she whispered. I reached into my bag and placed the flash drive on the table. It looked small, almost harmless, but everyone stared at it like it was ticking. My mother frowned. "What is that?" "Proof," I said softly, "of where your money really went, of what Lily did with the charity funds, and of how Dad helped her hide it." The silence that followed was suffocating. My father's face went pale. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," I said. "I have bank statements, transfers, emails, even photos, all dated, all verified." I met his eyes. Michael Hensley made sure of it. Lily shot up from her chair. "You went to him." I looked at her calmly. "He came to me. He thought I should know how far my loving family was willing to go." My mother's hand trembled as she set the wine bottle down. "Sarah, you can't do this to your sister. To us." "Do this," I repeated, laughing softly. "I'm not doing anything. You did this to yourselves. I just stopped cleaning up your mess." My father slammed his hand against the table. "You will not embarrass this family." I stood up slowly, my heart pounding but steady. "You already did that the day you chose to protect lies over your own daughter." The air felt thick, no one moved, no one breathed. Finally, I picked up the flash drive and slipped it back into my bag. "I'm not here to destroy you," I said quietly. "I'm here to say goodbye." Lily's voice cracked. "Sarah, please." I turned to her. "You wanted my house. You wanted my silence. You wanted my dignity. You can have none of them." She flinched. My mother started crying. My father said nothing. I walked out of that house feeling lighter than I had in years. The night air hit my face like freedom. I didn't look back. When I got home, I sat on the porch and watched the stars blink through the clouds. For the first time, my house didn't feel like a place I was defending, it felt like mine. Truly mine. Days passed. Weeks. I never sent the evidence anywhere. I didn't need to. A few days later, news broke that Michael Hensley's company was under audit, the charity division specifically. I never said a word. but I knew the truth had a way of finding daylight. Then one morning, I found a letter in my mailbox. No name, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper handwritten in my sister's delicate cursive. "You were right. I was wrong. I thought I could control everything. I can't. I'm sorry." That was it. No excuses, no manipulation. Just truth, for once. I folded the letter and tucked it in my journal. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I made tea and sat by the window, my mind quiet for the first time in years. I realized that revenge had never been the point. The real victory wasn't exposing them, it was finally refusing to live in their shadow. Sometimes peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from walking away, from letting the truth speak for itself and never looking back. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter anymore. I felt like the woman who finally came home. A few months passed before I heard from my family again. By then, the storm had already hit. Michael's company had gone through a full internal investigation. The charity fund was frozen. My sister had been quietly let go. The media never mentioned her name. My father had enough connections to keep her out of the headlines, but the whispers spread anyway. People in town began to talk. And for a family like mine, reputation was everything. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I didn't even ask for an apology. I simply went on with my life slowly, quietly, but freely. At first, the silence felt strange. I'd spent my whole life in their noise, the constant criticism, the manipulation, the guilt. Now the absence of it all felt both heavy and peaceful, like standing in a room after a hurricane. I focused on my house, on small things that grounded me, repainting the walls, replanting my garden, hanging new curtains that let in more light. It was my way of reclaiming space physically and emotionally. One evening I was pruning the roses when I heard a car pull into my driveway. For a moment my heart skipped that old reflex, the panic of confrontation. But when I turned around, it wasn't my parents. It was Lily. She stepped out slowly, wearing jeans and a plain sweater, no designer bag, no high heels, no mask of arrogance. Just her. For the first time in years, she looked real. "Can we talk?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. We sat on the porch, the same spot where she'd once come to mock me about this house. Only now she looked smaller. Tired. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she began. I needed to see you." Her voice trembled and it caught me off guard. "After everything happened," she continued, "Mom and Dad stopped speaking to me for a while. They blamed me for the embarrassment even though they helped me do it. And I realized something: they don't love anyone unconditionally. Not even me." She let out a bitter laugh. "All my life I thought being the favorite made me special. Turns out it just made me useful." I stayed silent, letting her speak. "I lost everything, Sarah," she whispered. "My job, my savings, my friends. Everyone's gone. And I know I deserve it, but I just want you to know. I'm sorry. For all of it. For the lies. For trying to take your home. For letting them turn me against you." The old me, the one desperate for validation, might have jumped at those words, eager to forgive and forget. But I wasn't her anymore. I studied her face, searching for sincerity, and for once I found it. "You hurt me," I said quietly, "worse than anyone else ever could, because I kept loving you even when you didn't deserve it." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know." We sat there for a long time, the air thick with everything we never said. Finally I asked, "What are you going to do now?" She shrugged. "Start over, I guess. Maybe this time do it without taking from anyone else." I nodded slowly. That's a good place to begin. There was no dramatic hug, no movie-ending reconciliation. She left with tears in her eyes, and I watched her go, feeling a mix of sorrow and strange relief. That night, I sat alone on my porch again, the crickets humming softly in the distance. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak. But instead of bitterness, what I felt was gratitude. Because in losing them, I had found myself. Over the following weeks, my parents tried to reach out. Calls, messages, even letters written in my mother's neat cursive filled with excuses disguised as apologies. I didn't answer any of them. Not because I hated them, but because I finally understood that love shouldn't require constant forgiveness. Sometimes walking away isn't cruel, it's self-respect. Michael and I kept in touch, though our connection was more one of mutual understanding than anything romantic. He'd send updates now and then, letting me know how things at the company had changed, how the charity fund had been restructured to prevent future abuse. "Your sister's mistakes made us better," he wrote once. And strangely, I believed him. One morning, about a year later, I woke up to sunlight spilling across my floor. The house felt warm, lived in, peaceful. My roses had bloomed outside the window, the air smelled faintly of rain, and the world felt softer somehow. I brewed a cup of coffee and sat on my porch watching the quiet street, thinking of how much had changed. Once upon a time, I thought family was something you had to earn. That if you were loyal enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, they'd love you back. But I've learned something far more important. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who doesn't make you bleed to prove you belong. I don't know if I'll ever see my parents again. Maybe one day I will. Maybe not. But I've stopped needing their approval to feel whole. Now, when people ask if I live alone, I smile. Because this house, the one they tried to take from me, isn't just my home. It's my proof that I survived them, that I rebuilt myself brick by brick without their permission. Sometimes I still hear echoes of the past, my mother's voice, my father's disappointment, my sister's laughter. But instead of pain, I feel peace. Because I'm not the quiet girl they could manipulate anymore. I'm the woman who finally chose herself. And maybe that's what karma really is, not punishment, but clarity. Because when you stop begging people to see your worth, life finally shows you how bright you can shine on your own. So if you've ever been told that family comes before everything, I want you to remember something. Not if that family asks you to destroy yourself to prove it. Choose yourself, even if your voice shakes, even if you have to stand alone, especially then. And when you do, you'll realize you were never alone at all.